Ibuki might be sane, we'll have to see. Sane or not, she got creepy feet? Hold on, Ryo! Your waifu has fucking chopsticks for legs!
Heian Kyo is creeping ever closer, and one of that chapter's big attractions is Ibuki Douji. She's a limited 5-star saber with a big bust. Buster cards, I said buster cards. But also a huge rack. Impressive visuals, sure, but let's see if our newest Raita servant is a big boss or a big chungus. First up on the list is Mountain Strength. Ibuki's kit doesn't have an official translation yet, meaning you'll see the various sources write it in different ways. The wikis say physical strength of natural surroundings, which sounds a little too literal for my taste, so I'll be going with Game Press's skill names. If what you see and what I say are different, that's why. Mountain Strength is a substantial 3-hit attack buff that also gives up to 50% charge, and it's on a 6-turn cooldown. That's a magical number for Buster Servants because any cooldown value of 7 or below enables something called the Vich system. Koenskaya of Light is a Buster support coming out in next year's anniversary, and she has a 1-2 punch in the form of a 50% targetable battery that also reduces its recipient's cooldowns by 2. Bring in a second Vich and that's 4 turns. Throw in the Atlas uniform and you can bring that down to 6. Add in a turn passing naturally and that's 7. The idea is that you run a kaleidoscope to start the fight at 100% charge. You pop the non-battery Vich buffs and Ibuki's second skill and NP immediately. You can also commit skill 3 when it's relevant. On turn 2, use Mountain Strength and 1 Vich battery to get a second NP. On turn 3, use the Atlas uniform's cooldown reduction and the second Vich's battery. This will make Mountain Strength available again along with skill 2 for a third Noble Phantasm and a big burst finale. Ibuki is the first saber with a battery this big, though it's worth noting Artoria is also Vich compatible due to Excalibur's overcharge effect. That has implications we'll get to later. The big benefit of Buster looping is that the enemy count doesn't matter. You aren't bound by hit counts or NP gain statistics. No, all your charge is accounted for. This lets you farm arbitrary enemy arrangements like a 2-1-3, 1-2-1, 1-1-3, doesn't matter. As long as you meet the raw damage check, you can just blow them all away. And that's important because 90+ nodes tend to present that kind of enemy lineup. Ibuki's second skill is 8-fold Wave Surge. It's a multi-turn buster and defense buff. Also a star dump. The offensive portion is good, but this is Ibuki's only form of protection, which is a bit unfortunate because Vich teams already abuse your health pool. Thankfully, you'll be running the Atlas uniform anyway, and it has an invuln you can use to rescue the situation. Rounding out Ibuki's regular skills is Impure Fingertip. If she tells you to smell it, run. It's a targeted NP seal that also gives Ibuki multi-turn buffs to crit damage and damage against undead. That last part's not terribly important, though I'll note there are weird and memey ways of turning enemies into undead. Now we come to our Noble Phantasm, Divine Sword, Blade of Kusanagi. It's an AoE buster attack that both pierces invuln and ignores defense. As its overcharge effect, it reduces buster resistance, though this occurs after the hit, so it's a lot more relevant to your follow-up cards. That's a ton of utility, and having the defense and invuln bypass combo means pretty much nothing can stop Ibuki from dealing full damage to our target. The special bullshit damage resistance and Castoria's NP are really about it. As an added bonus, you can write off the invuln pierce to nail your enemy with face cards since it lasts for a full turn. That's pretty damn good, but there's always a catch. Last I checked, there are 3 functional Vich-compatible sabers. 4 if you count Saber Alter. I don't because she requires an additional charger to work, so let's set her aside. Then there's Mordred, who does the job, but Ibuki absolutely blows her out of the water in the damage department. Arthur enemies aside. All good on that front. The issue for Ibuki comes when you compare her damage number with Artoria, the classic. You know how some servants have Imperial Privilege? Well, Artoria has a secret skill called Mascot Privilege, and unlike IP, it always works. She just keeps getting buffed, substantially at that. And the end result of this favoritism is that her damage is through the fucking roof. Against non-undead enemies, Artoria puts out higher damage, and it's not even close. An NP to Artoria with all her buffs can actually out-damage an NP5 Ibuki. The one thing to keep in mind is that Saber won't have 100% uptime on Dragon's Core, so her damage will dip for one of the waves. So what's the conclusion here? Is Ibuki a hard skip? A strictly worse Artoria? Not necessarily. The takeaway is that when it comes to raw damage output, Artoria is going to outperform Ibuki on soft, unprotected targets. But as enemies rely more and more on defensives to keep you at bay, Ibuki starts to shine. One fight that comes to mind is the Fate Requiem challenge quest. Erise has an evade on her basic kit, and she isn't afraid to use it. If you're using Artoria, you have to sink 2 face cards into that evade, and hope Excalibur can pop the bar by itself. If you whiff, you're stuck sucking your thumb. Ibuki on the other hand can go straight in with the Blade of Kusanagi and mop up with her face cards, which will also bypass her evade. And if you're wondering how I'm using Ibuki Vich in a fight that went away before either of them got released, that's because this isn't Fate Requiem. They actually bring the fight back in Tesla Fest as a part of its boss gauntlet. So as you can see, Ibuki trades some raw damage for challenge quest potential, meaning there's more to using her than just 2 Vitches and a K-Scope. So let's talk loadout. In terms of append skills, you'll want the charge append if you have a 0-star K-Scope to get her up to an even 100. Otherwise, the extra attack bonus will be your target, so you can lean in with Brave Chains. Her attack buff is a bit tricky to work around with its hit-based effect, but as compensation, Ibuki has the highest base attack of all Sabers, and a triple Buster deck. Combined with her Buster Noble Phantasm, this gives you multiple ways of assembling a devastating Buster Brave Chain. Get crits on top of that, and they are dead, dead, dead. In fights where your crits matter, Vitch can actually help with that too. She has stardoms and absorption modifiers to make your life easier. As a Saber, Ibuki's base absorption stat isn't bad either, so when you pair her with casters like Merlin, she'll naturally accumulate more stars, distribution RNG aside. That said, I'd still recommend stacking the deck with absorption modifiers. Miss Majin and Armament of Victory come to mind. Down the road we get Cabal II, which gives both absorption and crit damage on a Buster card. Then there's Mishirushi no Tsurugi, which pairs an absorption effect with a defense ignoring effect. Normally only Ibuki's Noble Phantasm has this effect, and it doesn't persist unlike the Invuln Pierce, so if you're attacking a fortified target, this code can make a double tap easier. Otherwise you have a number of raw crit damage codes that work especially well with Vitch teams, ones like Mistress of the Heavens. For craft essences, you obviously have K-Scope for farming applications, but if your use case isn't 3-turn farming, you have some pretty interesting alternatives. Because Ibuki's attack buff is hit-based, you can use Golden Sumo to make up for any downtime. Aerial Drive has the magical combo of starting charge, NP damage, and Buster performance, all of which Ibuki wants. And unlike Golden Sumo, it's coming back. Halloween Trilogy, 2023. Look forward to it. Then you have Buster crit options like Victor of the Moon, Joint Recital, Starry Nights, Round and Round, and so on. If you happen to have it, Holy Night Slumber should also be acceptable. There was a Christmas 2 CE, it's thoroughly inaccessible to new players. Now if you miss out on the Vitch combo, or you don't have your own Merlin or Himiko to play around with, you can exploit some of their synergies to make a usable team. In the no-brainer tier, you have Waver with his generalist buffs, and Buster enhancing Bond CE. Mash can enhance Ibuki's defenses for more of a tank and spank playstyle, and then there's Summer BB, who can generate stars while locking Ibuki into a triple Buster hand. In a sick way, it's kinda like turning her into Artoria. That's the obvious shit, but if you look at Ibuki's traits, she has a comically long list, and a lot of these have potential, if not necessarily practical synergies. Animal Characteristics lets her team up with the other Koyanskaya, the weird one. And because she has the Demonic Beast trait, she's not penalized by Koyan Dark's Dominator Fox skill. She has a costume, so if you're a psychopath, you can try to run her with Miss Crane. Her buffs are at least things Ibuki would want, I guess. If you're the kind of player that opted for the Steno struggle, you can comfort yourself by saying she at least buffs Ibuki. Ibuki is also a dragon, and Jalter buffs those. I guess you could do that if you hate seeing Jalter get stars. Female means Elizabeth synergies on the table, and Chaotic Alignment lets her get some of Doman's buffs. Again, these aren't necessarily good ideas, but if you're the totally real John commenter and you got Ibuki and Doman in 2 tickets on a fresh account, well, now you have something to do besides jerk yourself off. That said, there are downsides to having a tag list longer than a Fen no Hitori comic. This opens up a lot of ways for Ibuki to eat bonus damage. Demonic, Divine, Dragon, even Giant. There are a lot of servants that punish at least one of her traits, and this makes her reliance on a single defense buff even more precarious. She even has the Saber Divine riding combo that Archer Nobunaga dunks on. The point is, you need to watch who you're picking a fight with. Oh yeah, you can't turn her into a pig. I know that's out of left field, but that's just one of Ibuki's properties and I didn't know where to put it. But speaking of odd facts, Ibuki has passive buff removal resistance. It's only 20%, so you shouldn't count on it by itself, but as a last resort, you can roll the dice. Right now the quality of farming Sabers is kinda terrible, leaning towards antiquated Buster beat sticks and dysfunctional Quicken Arts farmers. But Ibuki marks a turning point where the usability of AoE Sabers goes up tremendously. She's gonna fly under the radar for a few months, especially while Muramasa makes his entry, but the addition of Tamamo Vitch is gonna open up a world of possibility for those crusty Year 1 Sabers and this newcomer alike. If you found this video on Ibuki useful, by all means like and subscribe. You may also be interested in this guide I did for Arch Nemesis Kintoki. This weekend I'll be rolling for the new Fairy Knight Cup Servant over on JP, so stop on by for a crazy time. Twitch.tv/Finotaisen. See you there.